Today, we're taking a look at expanding the storage on my Threadripper UnRaid server. I use my UnRaid server as the main bulk media backup, as well as video storage, and for software shares. I've been wanting to build some VMs and even virtualize VMware ESXi on my UnRaid server for a long time now. In order to do this, though, I needed a storage array dedicated to virtual machine usage in order to make sure that the performance was good. I do have an NVMe cache drive, but my NAS is always busy in terms of file transfers, PC backups, and I do run quite a few Dockers off of the NVMe cache drive as well. I didn't want the performance for any of the services that I'm running to suffer, but I do really want to keep building out this UnRaid system. As for my drive connectivity, the motherboard that I'm using is an AsRock X399M with 8 built-in SATA ports on the motherboard. This is actually a pretty good amount of SATA ports included by default, but I've already used all 8 SATA ports for the main hard drive based array. Now, I could buy a PCI Express HBA or a RAID card and flash it into IT mode to give me the extra SATA ports that I'm looking for, but that would chew up my limited PCI Express slots. I ended up working with Silverstone to send over the SDP11 and the ECS07 adapter and controller. The SDP11 is a nifty little adapter that fits into a 3.5-inch drive bay, but it gives you slots for up to 4 M.2 SATA SSDs. In terms of space efficiency, this is a relatively efficient way to use the limited 3.5-inch drive bays in my server for an all SSD array. The IC dock adapters that I used in my TrueNAS server, for example, only allow for 2 2.5-inch standard SSDs to fit inside of a 3.5-inch hard drive bay. The adapter does require one SATA data cable for each SSD installed, but you are saving on total SATA power connections. It only requires one SATA power cable. For UnRaid servers such as mine, and probably yours, this is a really handy little device to have installed. Now, let's go back to the lack of available SATA ports on my motherboard. I can't connect any of these M.2 drives that I've added. Here is where the Silverstone ECS07 comes in. The ECS07 is a SATA controller built on an M.2 PCB, which connects to your system with an otherwise unused M.2 interface. On my X399M Threadripper motherboard, I had one leftover M.2 slot, which was unused. I see a lot of consumer motherboards that people are using with UnRaid setups that actually have 1 or even 2 extra unused M.2 ports, so I think this could help a lot of people out there who want an extra couple of SATA ports. If you already have your main cache drive installed and you don't need another cache drive, why not turn this empty M.2 slot into 5 extra SATA ports? So with the SDP11 and the ECS07, I've just expanded my UnRaid server to add an additional 4 total usable M.2 SATA SSDs, and I have 1 SATA port left over, probably for a future project. These Silverstone accessories really came in handy for this project. I've only consumed one of my 3.5-inch hard drive bays, which means that I can keep shucking Western Digital drives and growing the main hard drive array. I won't be impacting my NVMe cache drive in terms of virtual machines writing and reading a lot of files, and this solution allows me to add the extra SATA-based SSD just for the virtual machines, and in my case in particular, a whole nother ESXi server for my home lab. In terms of the performance, I was getting basically what I would expect from the M.2 SSDs being installed directly in the M.2 slot. The combination of the ECS07 SATA controller and the SDP11 adapter didn't appear to slow down or modify the write speeds on the drives at all. These are SATA SSDs after all. Under the best conditions, they really tend to max out at something like 550 megabytes per second if you're reading and writing under the most perfect conditions. As for the extra SATA SSD array, you can really set this up however you wish. For now at least, I opted to test this with the default selection of a 1 terabyte usable array with 2 of the 4 total 512 gigabyte disks essentially functioning as parity drives. This will definitely work, and I didn't have any glaring issues with it. That being said, I like doing stuff the hard way most of the time. Probably going to change this around a little bit and give these SSDs directly to a TrueNAS VM on this UnRaid server. The TrueNAS VM will provide an iSCSI ZFS-backed array to the ESXi virtual machine. Better get those, dog. I heard you liked VMs, so I virtualized hypervisor memes ready. This will let me store the VMs on a data store, which will really be living on the TrueNAS VM, connected by two 10 gigabit virtual network interfaces to the ESXi VM. Overall, this will definitely add some complication to the setup, but it will give me the exact features that I want with all of the software and the hardware that I'm familiar with. I'm really excited about this setup. I think it's going to perform very well for my use case. My UnRaid storage server can keep expanding relatively unbothered over time, and I get another ESXi host virtualized on UnRaid, which means that I'm going to save on power costs over time from not building another physical ESXi host. Especially with the power prices increasing, reducing power consumption in a home lab is a pretty big deal. Thanks again to Silverstone for sending over the SDP11 and the ECS07 adapters and controller. These were really the key components in getting this setup built. If you like this kind of home lab server content where I plan and build out my home lab, you should definitely subscribe to the channel. There's always another project on the way. Hit that thumbs up button if you like this one, and after you subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit that bell icon for future video notifications.